Do you expect to pass the bar exam? Not just hope that you'll pass or believe that you'll pass, but really expect to pass. The answer to that question makes all the difference in the world, and in this video, I'm going to explain why that's so. My name is Jackson Mumey. I've helped thousands of students in the last 30 years pass their bar exam, and I'll share with you the secrets we've learned in this upcoming video. Three-part series on the bridge from despair to expectation. We've been looking at the progress and the process that you have to follow in order to be successful on your bar exam. In episode 1, I talked about the first part of the bridge, moving from despair to hope, and I encourage you to check that out if you haven't watched it, or if you're feeling some degree of despair, maybe you're just starting out and you feel pretty bad about how it's going. This is the beginning of the journey, and it's an important part in terms of making progress. If you remain in despair, you're just not going to be successful on the exam. And so for many people, the very first stop along this very long bridge, kind of like the one behind me, is to get to hope. You need to be hopeful about the outcome and the results, to hope against hope, to hope and pray, to have a ray of hope, all of that kind of language that we talked about. And you want to start to change your habits, and you want to start to see evidence of improvement. Those are the byproducts of that place of hope along the bridge. Then in our second video in the series, we talked about the bridge from hope to belief. And we talked about why belief is this idea of growing momentum, and that it represents something of the halfway point in actually getting to your goal. We talked about the kind of active language that believers have, and the kind of purposeful design cumulative habits that you acquire when you are in the belief mode. We also talked about the evidence becoming more sustained and developing and growing. You're improving and getting better and better. And all of that leads you to about the halfway point on our bridge, which is belief. But you know, there's still a half a bridge out there. That's a long way to go. It's a very long way to go. Getting to belief is halfway across this very long bridge of ours, but the final step in the journey is going from belief to expectation. And while it looks like a long jump, actually it comes pretty quickly once you've made that mental shift. And so I want to talk about that today, but I want to begin by talking about why expectations are so important. I'm reminded of a pretty famous story. I'm told that it's not just apocryphal, it actually happened. There was a family called the Flying Walendas. They were trapeze high wire artists. And back in the 1910s or 1920s, they were allowed to go and place their high wires across Niagara Falls. And every summer they would do a series of high wire acts across Niagara Falls. And people came by the tens of thousands to watch. It was quite an extraordinary achievement and a spectacle. And as the Walendas did this every year, they just got more and more extravagant with what they did. Well, the leader of the Walenda family, as part of his act, had a bicycle that he rode across on a high wire across Niagara Falls. And it was quite an extraordinary thing to do, as you can imagine. And he rode the bicycle from one side of the falls to the other. And everyone was just astounded, and the crowd went crazy when he got to the other side, and they were all cheering and roaring and screaming. And he said, well, I've got something special for you this year. I'm going to ride back to the other side of the falls in just a moment on my bicycle, but this time I'm going to do it blindfolded. The crowd gasped. They were just stupefied by this thought of him riding a bicycle across Niagara Falls at this incredible height on a high wire blindfolded. And he then turned to the crowd and he said, how many of you think I can make it? And they all started cheering. And he said, no, really, how many of you think I can really make this safely from this side of the falls to the other side of the falls, blindfolded on my bicycle, and make it there? And the crowd was going nuts. They were screaming. They were saying, I assume the equivalent of "you're the man," to Walenda. And so he said, how many of you really expect I can make it? And they said, oh, yes, yes, yes. And he stopped and he pointed at a man and he said, get in the basket. There's a big jump between belief and expectation. I might have believed that Walenda could make it, but I have to expect that he can make it before I'm going to hop in that front basket and let him ride me across the falls. Now, as I understand the story, no one was quite brave enough to take him up on it. He did make it back across the falls blindfolded. Now, why do I share that story, besides the fact that it's just amazing to think about? Is that when it comes to belief and expectation, there is a distinction. I think a lot of bar takers believe that they can pass the bar exam, and that's the language that they use. I believe I can pass. I believe I might pass. I believe I should pass the exam. But that's not quite the same thing as expecting to pass. And in my experience, while a lot of people who believe will pass, the people who expect to pass almost always do. And so I want to be able to identify for you today what it takes to reach that level of expectation where you're so confident that you would metaphorically get in the basket and ride back across the falls. When I think about expectation, I think about things that I know to be true. I expect the sun will come up tomorrow. I expect that I will be, the same human that I am tomorrow that I am today. I expect certain things to be the same. I expect my coffee to taste the same way every day. I mean, there's a lot of things I just expect in life. We all do that, right? Expectations come from habits and routines. They come from experience in the past. And there may not be any particular reason that we know these things to be true going forward, but we have high expectations for them. Expectations, I think, make a huge difference when you're studying for the bar. Perhaps you had someone in your life that had high expectations of you. They told you that they expected more from you or better from you, and you did everything you could to meet their expectations. But you know, the person whose opinion counts the most when it comes to expectations is you. It's what you expect of yourself that's really going to make a difference here. And when you expect very little of yourself, you're going to get very little. Expect a little bit more, you'll get more. And if you expect a lot, then in my experience, you'll get a lot. Problem is, most of us set our expectations very low, don't we? We expect very little so that we don't disappoint ourselves. Oh, I expect things will go okay, but I'm not really all the way out there. I believe and hope that the teams I root for will do well, but I don't expect them to do well. Maybe you can relate to that. Well, when it comes to expectations for the bar exam, it's been my experience that there are some characteristics, some things that we can identify that help to show us when someone's really moving into this expectation phase of the bridge that we've been talking about. As we've been talking in the other stages of the bridge, from despair to hope to belief, I've used three broad categories or classifications. I've talked about language, habits, and evidence, and I want to do the same again with this discussion. Let's first look at the language of expectation. And as we've been saying all along, the words we use create the worlds we live in. This is certainly true when it comes to expectations. When I talk to students who expect to pass, really expect to pass, what I hear is that they are resolute. There is no wavering. There is no equivocal language that they're using. They're not saying, well, I hope I expect to pass, or I believe I expect to pass. They're simply saying, I expect to pass. And they're not bragging, they're not aggressive, they're not cocky in any way. It's simply a calm statement made directly. I expect to pass. I expect to do well. I expect to be able to answer enough multiple choice questions to pass the exam. I expect to write my performance tests in 90 minutes successfully. I expect to write essays that cover the topics that have to be covered successfully. You see how it goes. I expect things to go well on the bar exam. Now, to be sure, these people are not Pollyannas. They don't, that there won't be any crisis or problems or difficulties. I don't think that's it at all. But I think that what matters is that in their own mind, they've made the leap from belief over to expectation. They expect something to occur, and because they're acting in accordance with those expectations, their language reflects it. So think about the kind of language you've been using leading up to your bar exam. Have you been talking about your expectations? I expect to do well on the exam. I expect to be able to understand. I expect to know what topics are being tested. I expect to recognize the disputes and conflicts I want to write about, and so on. Or are you using language that's much more tentative than that? Well, I hope I know what they're asking me. I hope I'm able to write. I believe I could write a good essay if everything went well for me. I believe I might be able to pass, right? I believe I might be able is very far from I expect to pass. And I know that there's a certain feeling of humble brag that people who are in our profession don't really want to get engaged in. They don't want to say, well, I expect to pass and then fail, because that would look pretty miserable. So to some extent, I know that we all back off of that, but I'm really talking about your private conversations, the things you say in private to yourself. When you're talking to yourself, do you say, I expect to pass? And if you don't, I would put that affirmation up. I take a sticky note, I put it on your computer, I put it on your bathroom mirror, I put it on the doorway in and out of your bedroom. I put it everywhere you can put it. And I repeat it every time you see it. I expect to pass. I expect to pass. I expect to pass. Why? Why does that matter? What difference does it make? Expectations change the way we do things. If I expect the sun to come up tomorrow, I'm going to behave one way. If I expect the sun will not come up tomorrow, I'm going to behave very differently. If I expect that there will be snow on the ground tomorrow, well, I'm going to do some things differently. If I don't expect snow because I'm here in Florida, I'll do it differently. I'll behave differently. Expectations change the way we behave. And I think that that's reflected not just in our language, but in our habits. When I look at the habits of students who expect to pass, what I notice is that for the most part, they are calm and they do things in a normal, routine, habitual way. Now, here's what I mean by that. They're not lazy. They're not taking things for granted. They're not chilling. They're literally just calm and purposeful. A student who expects to be successful acts in a purposeful way. They have a set schedule and they follow that schedule. Now, it might be 3 hours of study one day and 6 hours of study the next day. It might be no study on a certain day or a lot of study. It doesn't really have to be the same every day, but there is a plan and they're following the plan. And they're not following it frantically or manically. They're just following the plan. They have an expectation that they will be finished with their studies in time. They'll know what they need to know and they'll be okay. Now, someone that doesn't expect to pass does it just the opposite. They flail around madly when it comes to their study. Oh, I've got to put in more hours. I've got to put in 12 hours or 14 hours. I've got to cram. I've got to memorize. I've got to do more questions. I hear this all the time from people who are literally panicked about the result. They don't expect to pass. And so they're doing everything they can in order to brace themselves against the inevitable failure that they see coming. And I think it's absolutely critical that you be able to see that you're able to pass and then follow the route to get there. Now, if you're in our course, we've given you that roadmap. It's very clear. If you're not in our course, well, hopefully you've got some kind of a roadmap to follow. Follow that. Do what that thing is and follow it step by step. Follow it purposefully. Follow it intentionally. Create a habit that is built around calmness and routine. If you're not calm about what you're doing, if you are frantic and manic, then what happens is you waste an incredible amount of energy. You waste a lot of time. You will waste a lot of effort. I hear from students right before a bar exam every year who are not in our course, who are so frantically afraid at that point that they're reaching out and they're trying to reach me to say, could you help me even though I'm not in your course and it's only 2 weeks before the bar exam? The answer is no, I can't. You know, the way that I can help people is to give them a purposeful approach, a roadmap, but it takes time to run through that roadmap. It takes time to follow it. And if you're at the very end and you don't expect to pass, well, then there's no amount of work or activity or behavior that's going to change that. You have to be moving towards that expectation. If you find your habits right now are purposeful and routine, that's a good sign. If you're getting up at the time that you expect to get up on bar exam days, that's good. If you're going to bed at the time you expect to go to bed on bar exam nights, that's good. If you're eating the way you'll eat during the bar exam, that's good. All of those things create atmospheric expectations that allow you to do things the same way on the exam that you've been doing them leading up to it. It's part of that expectation. If I expect things to go a certain way, I'm going to behave a certain way. If I expect things to be bad, and certainly there are expectations around bad things, then I'm constantly frantic because I'm waiting for the next disaster to befall me. And I think this is one of the real differences that I see. If you're moving towards that expectation side of our bridge, you are working in the same pattern every day. You're doing the work that you need to do at the point you need to do it, and you're confident that that's the right work to be doing. When students ask, should I be doing these questions when we've laid out that these are the questions to be done, my question to them about the questions is, what? Which is maybe what you're saying to me right now. But my point is that when people start questioning what they're doing, well, they don't have that expectation any longer. Now, what they're really doing is they're frantic or they're panicked and things start to disintegrate very rapidly. And that's what I want to avoid for you. So If you've got this expectation of success, you're going to work in a very purposeful way each day. And as you get closer to the exam, that may change a bit as you get closer day by day, but the overall approach, the study approach, won't change. You won't suddenly switch from FLA writing style to IRAC style. You won't suddenly switch into memorization and recitation from an approach that's built on selective intuition, for example. Those are things that allow you to be successful. So I think it's important to have the right habits. And if you haven't been building those habits, there's still plenty of time to do that. Start creating the habits now that you want for the exam. Create habits around sleep and waking. Create habits around eating and exercise. Create habits around sitting for 3 hours at a time. Create habits for the way you study and the way you write. Create habits for your essays and your performance tests. Create habits for how long it takes you to answer a multiple choice question. These things all make a difference. But ultimately, I think what makes the biggest difference for people when it comes to expectations and the characteristics of it is the evidence that you see for it. When someone expects to pass, I think that in part what happens is they begin to see that improvement that we had at the stages of hope and belief now becomes consistent. We're seeing not only improvement, but steady results every time. We're seeing substantial scores on multiple choice. We're seeing substantially well-written essays with the right word count and talking about the right disputes with the right conclusions using the right law. When you start doing that substantially, you know that you're on track. Now, this doesn't mean that it's all unicorns and rainbows. There may be an essay that you write and the wheels just fall off. It just doesn't work at all. Now, here's the difference between someone who believes they'll pass and someone who expects that they'll pass. The person who believes they'll pass will be panicked by that bad essay that they've just written, and they'll suddenly think, oh my God, what am I doing? I don't know anything about evidence. The person who expects to pass says, you know what? This is an opportunity to learn some things within the subject of evidence that I didn't know before, and I'll add that to my notes or my mind map. I'll make sure that I understand those concepts, and I'll write another evidence essay because I want to get more confident in this subject. You see the difference in those two positions? The one individual who believes that they'll pass but isn't sure is now unsettled by a bad result, or they took a multiple choice test exam, a practice exam, and it didn't go as well as they wanted. It can be very unsettling. But the person who expects to pass looks at that same result and says, okay, I see what went wrong. I see what I've got to do here. I see what I need to learn. What a great opportunity. I just learned 25 new questions that I need to understand better in order to reach my goal of passing the bar, which I expect will happen. See, the expectation goes not only to the end result, but also to the study. I expect to learn from my study period today. I expect to get stronger. I expect to know more. I expect to do better. And the evidence of that comes over and over and over again. Look, I can't tell you why the universe operates this way. I can't tell you that the secret or the law of attraction works in a particular way, except that I see it does over and over and over again. What you ask for, what you truly believe is going to happen, what you expect to happen is what comes to you. I see that all the time. But I also see the negative of this. I see people who expect to fail. And let's talk a little bit about that for a moment, because we started this discussion way back in despair. But there are some people who are in despair and they just jumped over to expectation. And now their expectation is that they're going to fail. And because they expect to fail, here's what they do. They start lashing out. They get mad at everyone and everything. Oh, it's everyone else's fault. It's my law school's fault. It's my bar review course's fault. It's my family's fault. They don't support me. It's everybody's fault. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough whatever. And because we expect to fail, we start creating these huge hurdles in our lives. Oh, I can't possibly study because my cat got sick today. Now, I got to admit, I'm not a cat guy, but I understand your pets are important to you, but maybe there's somebody else that could help out with a pet today, right? It's not a reason for you to give up and suddenly say you can't go to the exam. I tell this story a lot, and if you've heard it before, forgive me for sharing it, but again, it's one of those interesting stories that I think demonstrates sometimes how the universe will work. I got 2 phone calls a few years ago, both on the same day, right before the bar exam. The first call came early in the day, and it was from a student who was sobbing hysterically. And this was back in the days before video chat, so all I could do was listen on the phone, and I could barely get a word in and understand what was going on. I just kept hearing this horrible crying and sobbing, and I wasn't sure exactly what was going on. Well, finally, the student got enough out to tell me that there'd been a death, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And then they told me the death was the death of their beloved cat. Okay, I feel badly about that, I really do. And I understood that this person had a close relationship with their cat. And the student told me that because of the death of their cat this morning, that there was no way that they could sit for the bar exam. It just couldn't happen. They were so devastated they wouldn't be able to go on, and they needed to withdraw from the exam and take it the next time. Okay, I listened, I said fine, I made my notes, and I was done. Well, then, probably not more than 3 or 4 hours later, I got another phone call from a different student. The student was also sobbing. They were in tears. It was horrible. And I couldn't, again, it was very difficult to understand what was going on. And finally, what I heard was that this student's father had gone into emergency surgery that morning and died on the operating table, quite unexpectedly. And of course, I've just heard the cat story, so I'm already in the mode of withdrawal deferral. And I said to the student, well, I'm assuming you're going to withdraw from the exam. And the student's crying and choking down tears, but stops and says to me on the phone very clearly, no, I'm going to go take the exam. I promised my dad that I would take this test. I promised him that I would pass it. I expect to pass. I can hold my grief for a few days. I'm going to go ahead and finish the journey. Well, that was interesting. Well, here's what happened. The second student did go in, take the exam, and did pass. The first student deferred, I don't know how many more times, 4, 5, 6 more times. Every time there was something that happened right before the exam, until finally they just gave up and didn't take the exam at all. Now, I'm not disparaging the first student at all, but the reality is that we have expectations in life, and if we expect to not be successful, as I think that first student did, then anything that happened, anything, no matter whether it was big or small, was a good enough reason to not go through with the test because they didn't expect to be successful. But the second student who expected success was able to overcome the worst kinds of tragedies. And the truth is, we've had other students who've had deaths in their family and horrible things have happened to them, and they've still gone in and taken and passed the exam. And we put their stories up on our website because they're so inspiring, because these are people that just said, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep working until I pass. I expect to pass. I think that as we wrap up this series about expectations, the most important thing I can tell you is that what you expect is what will come to happen. If you expect success, you will get it. Now, I don't mean just giving lip service to it. I mean really expecting it. If you don't expect success or you expect failure, you're going to get that too. And so it's a choice that you have to make. But here's the great news. It's your choice. No one else chooses for you. I don't choose for you. Your bar review doesn't choose for you. Your law school doesn't choose for you. The bar examiners don't choose for you. It's your choice. If you choose to be successful, you are successful. You can be successful. Look, it's really very simple. The fact that you're halfway across the bridge, you're at belief, already means you're way ahead of the game. You're way further along than everybody else. Now take the last steps that you've got to take. Get to the other end of the bridge to expectation, which is where your life is given back to you. It's where your opportunity to move forward in your career is given to you. It's where you have earned the right to be a member of our profession. You have earned that right, and you should expect that it will happen for you. I really believe that when you are ready for the exam, when you don't dread it or you're not afraid of it, you're not hoping that it stays a bit further away. I mean, I hope I have a few more days to study, but you really come to the point where you say, you know what? I'm ready. Let's bring the exam on. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go take it. I'm ready to show what I can do. When you take the approach that the bar exam is an opportunity to show how much you know and how far you've come and what you've learned, then you will pass the bar. That's the right expectation to have. I expect that if you take that view, you will be successful on the test. Well, thanks for joining me on this journey across the bridge. I hope it's been a good one for you. And I look forward to seeing your name on the pass list as someone who expected success and found it.